Recently, PSBA partnered with the Pennsylvania Association of Student Councils to coordinate an interview between Eva Rankin, Senior Student Representative for PASC, and House Leader Joanna McClinton, a Democrat representing Delaware and Philadelphia counties in the 191st District. PASC is a statewide organization that engages student leaders and provides resources for them to hone their leadership skills, all in benefit of the school communities that they serve. The conversation was held in celebration of International Women's Day, an annual observance that honors the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. In their conversation, the pair discussed Leader McClinton's background, career path, and what still drives her in the leadership role she now holds. In this inspiring conversation, Leader McClinton encourages students to make their voices heard and communicate their needs. The pair also spoke about leadership traits and leading through challenges with a focus on confidence and the importance of listening. Enjoy the interview.
For those who don't know, Leader McClinton is a representative from the 191st District representing Delaware and Philadelphia counties. And all throughout your career, you've made history. First in 2018, when you became the first woman and first African American to be elected as House Democratic Caucus Chair. And you made history again in 2020 when you were the first woman elected as House Democratic Leader. So clearly you've had an amazing career serving the Commonwealth, and I'm honored to speak with you and ask you a few questions today. So first, a bit on your background. Growing up in school, what were a few subjects that you were most drawn to when you were a student?
So one of my favorite subjects as a high school student was history. And middle school, social studies, and then when I got to college, political science.
Definitely, I can relate to all of that. So that's great to hear. And so the next question here is, when did you know that you wanted to become a government representative, and who was most integral in supporting you on that journey?
So I was not born or even growing up interested in running for office, but thanks to my former boss and certainly now a friend and mentor, State Senator Anthony Hardy Williams gave me a real nudge to not be afraid by the opportunity, but to really consider it seriously. And once I gave a commitment to run, to be all in, and that was in 2015, days before they had to select a Democratic nominee for a special election that was coming that summer.
Wow, that sounds like a incredible opportunity, and just 7 years in office now, and you've already done amazing things. And so we really appreciate your work. So transitioning a bit more towards leadership lessons, my question is, when did you first feel you harnessed your voice? And on the flip side, what would you do or say to people who don't feel like their voice is important, powerful, or able to make change?
Absolutely. So the key is to knowing that representation matters, that if you're not in the room, your voice is not heard. The late, great Shirley Chisholm used to say, if you don't have a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. I would say that I harnessed my voice, quite frankly, in my youth. Growing up, I had so many opportunities to become a leader at my church as a teenager, when I was even younger as an adolescent, and as a young adult, really being able to gain the confidence in my voice and in how my voice helped many others. It was just amazing and really empowering.
That's amazing. So moving on with that, what do you feel is your greatest strength as a leader?
Oh boy. So I'd say to listen. I had to learn, and it was a lesson first, I had to learn that as the caucus leader, so many of my colleagues, their number one expectation is simply for me to listen to their concerns, their needs, and then be able to incorporate their voice into all of the work that I do on their behalf.
Mm-hmm. And I think the next question goes along perfectly with that, and how important listening is. And so my question is, how do you set the precedent for cohesion in your chamber when there is an apparent increase in political discord in the current political climate? And so I was just wondering if you could speak to that.
Absolutely, Eva. So it is apparent, it's obvious, and it's unfortunate, but I am optimistic that this is a moment in time that we can move forward from, where we can have more civility and, most importantly, respect for the institution that we serve in. It's historical. It has done so many great things for Pennsylvanians throughout time. But building off of listening, once we listen, I think it's important to incorporate ideas, to recognize that because I'm elected leader doesn't mean I have all the answers to every problem. But as I listen to my colleagues, as I listen to my members in my caucus, and most importantly, also those across the aisle, we can create the solutions that people are expecting and that they need.
That's amazing. And that's so good to hear your optimism, especially coming out of a really rough, tumultuous 2 years in our nation and also global history with the COVID-19 pandemic. And so my next question is, what struggles and accomplishments, so sort of contrasting ideas there, did you experience during the COVID-19 pandemic?
So the pandemic challenged us all. I mean, we had to learn how to keep each other safe from the virus, but also how to do the work needed. We needed to temporarily change laws that affect students like you. We had to work across the aisle to change the law that says you have to be in school for 180 calendar days because it was unclear how long schools were going to have to close. We were able to just recently get money to healthcare workers, who some of them are walking away because there's been such a strain on the profession. We were able to get more student loan forgiveness to nurses all across Pennsylvania. So we have had an opportunity with the pandemic. It was hard, it is still difficult, but we've had opportunity to, in fact, work together and work across the aisle.
It's amazing. Did you feel as a leader you were stretched in terms of emergency management? And also, how did you feel that cohesion either increased or perhaps fell apart in terms of how quickly you had to make these decisions?
So definitely in terms of emergency management, this is a crisis that the word we heard the most is unprecedented. So whether someone was in the White House or all the way down to the lowly state house, we were all experiencing these challenges for the first time. I had to, be creative when it came to helping seniors in my district who live in communal housing get masks, because of course at that time you couldn't purchase them, you couldn't find them, there weren't enough available. So I had to lean on relationships that I had built. Some friends of mine that I had recently connected with just in December of 19, visiting Taiwan, where they routinely wear masks because of the previous SARS outbreaks. They were able to send masks to me to send to my constituents. I mean, like emergencies and being creative and really finding solutions when there seemed to be none, getting people hand sanitizers, things that were just like running out of the shelves at the store. I mean, we had to really be creative and really figure out a way to be responsive to help stop the spread.
That's amazing. It seems like you're a very relation-minded leader, building relationships with those around you, helping to find solutions. So I think that's very cool to notice. And so on a different strain here, just sort of wondering, my generation is especially passionate about mental health, and I think we've been very vocal about that. And I think older generations as well are becoming more aware of that epidemic. And so what can be done to support mental health in schools, in your opinion?
So we need to first and foremost have an ample amount of counselors available. When we talk about expecting our students to soar, students like you in high school in the 12th grade, you need to be able to get the guidance and the support. You have to talk through your goals and dreams to find like schools that might be the right fit, programs that might be best, but we cannot sidestep the expectation of success with ignoring emotional health and the trauma that we have particularly all endured through this pandemic, of being enclosed, not being able to see our loved ones, our friends, taking walks, but, just really having so much fear and uncertainty. And that sets in, it causes so many problems. We've got to have therapists, and we have to be able to openly talk about making sure that people aren't functioning with challenges like depression. And I know one thing I've always just done in my district is the way we have a health fair. We always have a mental health fair, and maybe people don't want to come out and talk about things, but even if it's just a few, we have to break down the stigmas and realize that even our children, especially our children, have got to be able to deal with these challenges in a way that's therapeutic, the way they would be treated if they were physically sick.
Yeah. I love that you have a mental health fair. I'm active with some mental health groups in my school, and I think you hit on something that we work on a lot is destigmatization. So recognizing that mental health is just important as physical health, and sort of breaking down barriers for people trying to reach mental health care. So that's amazing to hear. And so my next question for you here is, at all times, I'm sure you have many people knocking on your door trying to share with you their opinion on a matter. And so my question is, how do you sort through the array of compelling arguments and perspectives to make your decisions in any given instance?
Well, you have to, of course, listen again. You have to consider all the sides. And it is tough because not only as a leader, but simply as someone who's working on creating policy, every vote we have positively impacts someone, and at the same time can negatively impact someone else. So you're balancing and prioritizing issues, and you're also figuring out, how to have the sound judgment necessary and how to actually make bad ideas or not so great ideas improved. Because my caucus is in the minority, many of our bills hardly ever see the light of day. But when we have ideas from the majority caucus, we file amendments, we have discussions, we involve stakeholders and constituents so that we can make ideas that aren't the best better. We can improve upon them. And then, of course, if there can't be improvement, we look for other ways to be able to say, this isn't, something that should be moving, and here's why it's detrimental. So we raise our voices at many times as well to simply be advocates.
That's amazing. And so this question isn't necessarily something that I provided beforehand, so I apologize, but it's building exactly on what you just said. And so I feel oftentimes that the media doesn't highlight the things that you just said, where caucuses are amending other bills, trying to work collaboratively. And so how would you disagree with the way that media portrays politics in its current state, or would you agree with it? Where do you fall on that spectrum?
So I think we have to focus on how there is not statewide coverage of what's going on in Harrisburg. There's a lot of media that is camped out in Washington, D.C. around the clock, waiting on the balconies in the halls of power at the U.S. Senate and the Congress. But in Harrisburg, it's a little bit less covered. And I had a local reporter, at least in my area in Philadelphia, say that they used to always be at the state capitol. And then over time, there were less and less and less. And as a result, while the local media talks about what we're doing in the Capitol all the time in central PA, people in other parts of the state are not seeing the headlines and not seeing actively how we're doing it. So I'd say that we have to make it kind of on the agenda. We have to make it breaking news. We have to also make sure that people are aware, so that, for instance, whomever the governor is next year, that they're able to draw more press all the time, more than a state rep, so that they're able to say, this is what the process looked like, and be able to tell the story.
That's amazing. I love how you definitely prioritize working directly with your constituents and keeping your constituents informed, and always staying grounded with who you're representing. And so I think that's very amazing. And so another question here is, in regarding to equity, in your opinion, who has the authority to resolve the congressional district dispute? I know that's been sort of an ongoing issue for the past few years in PA.
Now, when you say congressional dispute, do you mean in DC? What specifically do you have in mind there, just so I'm answering correctly, Eva?
For sure. So in regard to the map and the lines drawing the districts in Pennsylvania.
Okay, and redistricting. So we have court challenges that were in our state court system. They started in the Commonwealth Court, which here's all appeals, civil matters. And then the next jurisdiction is our state Supreme Court. And our congressional maps actually went to the highest court in the land, to the United States Supreme Court. And they just made a decision a couple of days ago that the map that was approved by the state Supreme Court will be in place and is in fact constitutional.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So that definitely answers my question there. And so I guess continuing on the strain of sort of recent events, and so school budgets are difficult at this time, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic. But in your opinion, what can be done to support schools with larger costs, maybe of special education or making up for learning loss due to the pandemic?
So it is important that people like yourself, Eva, those who are on similar student councils, student government, student body leadership, are able to communicate the need. We are always thrilled to work with the school board directors, to work with the school superintendents, to work with the teachers union, but students' voices are important. They matter, they're significant, and we cannot beat the drum enough to say that Pennsylvania needs to just end the practice of not fairly funding every school. As you know, it depends, and your parents make tough choices on where they can afford to live to do what's best for our educational opportunities. But we all know that, the average salary in our Commonwealth is $50,000. So that means that if you're making that salary, you can't live in certain types of communities that are very affluent and have higher property taxes, and you might get stuck in a school district that is not performing well. And it's just not fair because it stifles the opportunities for our students. And as someone who spent a big deal of my legal career as a public defender, when students feel hopeless and that no one is investing in them, they usually don't stay in school. And when you don't stay in school, you often end up, with literacy challenges, with limited opportunities, and unfortunately, sometimes within the criminal justice system.
I think you have a very cool perspective coming from law and having that experience with students in the past. And I would say you're definitely speaking to the heart of students, because I co-founded with the other student representative on the State Board of Education a program called Students for Education in Pennsylvania, acronym SEPA. And so we meet with a coalition of students statewide discussing relevant matters to the State Board and also the Department of Education. And that is, fair funding is something that we discuss frequently. So you are definitely have the pulse of the student body in Pennsylvania, and I think that's very amazing. And they're going to love to hear you say these things. And so, just two more questions for you, if you have the time.
Yes.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So moving on to your identity as a female leader, there's a common sentiment previously popularized by Michelle Obama that men can, quote unquote, fail upward. And so do you have a different experience as a female leader? Or how do you feel about this comment?
Oh, yes. So women are held to the highest standards. We can't make a mistake. We can't have a bad day. We can't be too loud, or we're stigmatized as being aggressive or being angry. We can't be, too confident, or we're arrogant. It is really a double standard that we see all of the time. There was so much floating around social media with our vice president's election, to all of the bossy girls that talk too much. You're a leader. And I can say that I was one of those little girls who was told on every report card, I was talkative. I talk too much. And I don't think it was said in a way to be mean. But I do think that just, my male teachers especially, did not realize that, this is just who I am. As we can see, fast forward, I'm out of fourth grade now and I'm still talking nonstop. But no, it is true. Men can make mistakes. They can have bad moments and misjudgments, but it is very different for women. And as the first woman in our chamber, it's a real responsibility. And I take it seriously. And I spend a lot of time off of work, trying to make sure that the decisions are made are sound, informed, and most importantly, importantly, that there's real representation so that many other women, can come after me and can go even higher than I currently am in our chamber and in government in Pennsylvania.
That's amazing. And I just appreciate that so much because I feel like you truly have helped make a spot at the table, as you were saying earlier, for future female leaders. And I really appreciate that. And so kind of a concluding thought here, if you wanted young leaders or female leaders to learn one thing from you, what would it be?
Oh, thank you. So one thing would be is to be yourself. You are going back to that pressure of being the first. We're told we have to look this way, present ourselves this way, and only wear, I'm being silly with an example, but, only wear a red suit or only wear, navy pants. We're told that we have to fit into a box, but we don't have to fit into a box. We can 100% be ourselves and respect everyone. And of course, people will see in you what you bring to the table. And even when you're not planning on, needing them to vote for you to become the leader, or for example, but, your colleagues, your peers will respect you, and they will, in fact, give you the ability to grow and to learn and to, most importantly, make a mark. So be yourself on this journey. We don't have to conform. When I was in law school, I always thought I have to look this way, I have to straighten my hair, whatever it is. And it's like, you fast forward, and the more mature I get, I understand that, of course, you have to be carrying yourself in a respectable manner, but you don't have to be in whatever that box is you have in your head of this is what a successful woman looks like. We, and however we come, are what successful women look like.
That is an amazing message, and one I will definitely carry moving forward. And I just want to say it's been an honor to speak with you here today, and I appreciate all of your very thoughtful answers to various questions on COVID, school funding, being a female leader, current events, and also about your background and your interests growing up. So I appreciate the time that we've spent together here today. And so I just want to say again, thank you to everyone who's watching, and thank you for joining us here today. And I hope you learned a bit about Leader McClinton, and also about her positions and about how she believes in student advocacy and leadership as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you kindly for this opportunity. I'm so grateful to talk to you, and I look forward to seeing all of you in Harrisburg to come on up when you're not in school and can advocate for these issues on the Hill.